Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the fourth episode of Tides of Lore. My name is Robert Silva, and I'm one half of your host team today, joined, as always, by my good friend Tim. How you doing, Tim?
Doing great, man. Can't stop playing this game. Definitely addicted at this point. Level 29 Pally right now. It's a good time.
Yeah, I've honestly fallen behind, bro. I'm not gonna lie. I watched the season finale of Arcane, and I got stuck on a TFT League of Legends binge.
Oh, don't worry. I look at the guild offline members, and I keep tabs on who's what level. And yeah, I haven't seen you on in a little bit, but all good. You'll get there.
I'll always come back to Classic WoW at some point, but yeah, no. After I eventually kick this little bender of mine, I'm sure it'll be good. But last episode, Tim, we covered the first and the second war. What went on?
Orcs going into Stormwind, dude. I wish I could see that battle. I wish I was there. That would have been a sight to be seen. Lothar coming in, helping out. What else? Help me out, Rob.
We had, eventually them destroying Stormwind and the humans fleeing north to the other human city of Lordaeron to attempt to form an alliance with the remaining human kings and some other races. Then we had a big clash between the alliance and the horde.
As it goes.
Yeah. I guess we had the first clash between the alliance and the horde, and the introduction of both the Horde's Death Knights as well as the humans' Paladins.
Ooh. Yeah. The first Death Knight, Terran Gorefiend. I remember him in TBC Black Temple. I was the first Death Knight. Even he likes it, I think. He makes sure everyone knows. He makes sure everyone.
I made sure the Skull of Gul'dan got through the portal.
Yeah. He is an egotistic one.
With that, today we're going to move back at least 20,000 years and a little bit earlier than that for when we're going to talk about the creation of the aspects. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Tides of Lore on YouTube, or if you're on Spotify, leave us a 5-star rating. It really helps the channel, ensures you won't miss a moment of this adventure. Now let's get started. So to get into the dragon aspects, first we need to talk more about the Titans. And while we're going to have a full dedicated video for them eventually, like I keep saying, the main point of the Dragon Aspect story is that the Titans created this group of, entities to watch out for Azeroth while they continued to try and purge the Void and the Old Gods from all these different planets across the stars. So they created these being called the Keepers. And they are more often referred to as just Titan Keepers, but they often have names, and they're kind of inspired by Norse gods. And the major one that we're going to talk about today is the Titan Keeper Tyr. You might recognize his name from specific places like Tyr's Fall, where the organization that would form the Guardian would be from. Places like that, as well as if you were ever interested in playing Paladins, I'm pretty sure your Legion Order Hall is within that temple as well.
Oh, you hear his name. I'm a Paladin main. You hear that name all the time. Tyr. There's abilities. There's the shield ability for Prot Paladin, Tyr's Light or something. You hold up your shield and you block damage and shit. He's a big name.
We do also see him in the most recent Dragonflight expansion, which we may or may not get to. But the point is that his purpose on this planet was to help shape life and to purge the corruption of the old gods. So he would work with the other Titan Keepers to form the land masses and whatnot and control the elements. But eventually there would be this threat that he would actually need help to defeat. In this time frame, we should mention that this is at least longer, a good bit longer than 20,000 years past when the Dark Portal is going to open. So this is way, way, way before any of the events we've ever talked about on Azeroth. This is when Norsdomer would describe a time when the world was young. And with that, there's these very primal versions of dragons called proto-dragons. And they're, shaped like wyverns from a Skyrim, or I guess what a dragon would be in Skyrim. But what we would most consider to be either a wyvern, or if you've played the game, the proto-drakes.
They're sick looking, man.
Oh, yes.
My favorite looking dragon, in my opinion.
I'll still never get that gold one, I swear.
I'm so sorry I got that without you.
You're a monster. You could have summoned me. I would have been there.
Yeah. Terrible.
So basically, there would be these groups. They would have different elemental properties depending on what like their coat was, but they could, at least from what it seems like, because two of the aspects that we do come to know are green and red, but they're supposed to be sisters. So I assume that any color dragon can just have any rainbow colored egg for whatever reason. But yeah, so long ago, these proto-drakes are kind of ruling across this land. And there's this big major one that is kind of like the embodiment of gluttony. They describe him as a nightmare given form in the Dawn of the Aspects book. And his name is Galakrond. He's basically this massive proto-dragon that has been so consumed by hunger, and I don't know if they ever like absolutely confirm this, certainly not in the Dawn of the Aspects, but it seems like he's also very much like corrupted by the whispers of the old gods, because he has these like creepy little limbs that hang off of him that are just like very eldritch in nature. He has all these eyeballs that are useless that pop out of all of these different places. And he is such a problem, like I said, that even the Keeper Tyr finds that he is not exclusively able to defeat this proto-dragon. It's so massive and so large that it, like, when its wings clap, it just like basically shakes the mountains as it goes by.
Doesn't he grow larger the more he eats, and he just eats everything? Or am I wrong on that?
No, that's exactly it. He actually ends up consuming so much that he runs out of all the things to eat in like the general area. And while it's even considered taboo, like amongst these semi-intelligent creatures, to resort to cannibalism, he's like, well, I'm not going to stop eating. So he ends up beginning to eat these proto-dragons as well. And I believe this is what kind of aids in the corruption of him twisting. I believe like something about eating these creatures that are born of the elements basically corrupts him further with the whispers of the old gods, because as he does, he becomes more and more grotesque and more basically undead. It's really, I mean, it is basically undeath, because even when he also uses like his dragon breath, it's more like this gas cloud that just sucks the life out of all of these creatures whenever he does it. And when he does, they also get resurrected as these zombie creatures. They call them the not living in the book. And so he kind of has him being this massive eldritch flying entity of terror, along with all of his little zombie proto-drakes that he sometimes decides to munch on and sometimes doesn't. And like I said, Tyr would be looking for a way to combat this. I don't entirely remember the details of who exactly takes place in this fight, but early on in the book, Tyr is in combat with him, with the massive creature, and he's like trying to drag him from the sky and whatnot. And the creature ends up just completely biting the keeper's hand off and ripping it clear and swallowing it, which I can only assume charges him up with even more of this elemental power. And that's when he begins to turn to a group of what are seen as like the intelligent group of the proto-drakes. In this book, most of the proto-drakes, they can't speak. They can't communicate with each other like normal, but some of them can. That's where we kind of meet our five aspects. We meet Alexstrasza, we meet Neltharion, we meet Nozdormu, Ysera, and Malygos. And these are going to be one of each color. Alexstrasza is red, Neltharion's black, Nozdormu is gold, Ysera is green, and Malygos is blue.
Did you do the dungeon that shows them, like this story in Dragonflight?
Yes. And also, if you do want to see this in a bit more of a clearer picture, there is the Legacies animation on YouTube, and it's kind of Nozdormu going back in time with one of the Dracthyr and explaining to them like how the dragons even came to be, how the Dracthyr came to be. And we'll talk a bit more about that as we move into the Dracthyr later. So after kind of trying to get these proto-dragons to assist him, that's when he does lose his arm. And eventually the five more intelligent ones group up with a bunch of the other proto-drakes, and they're all like, we're just gonna like mad charge them. Even the dumb ones, we're gonna just mad charge them. And it ends up being like an absolute bloodbath. And they realize that if they don't come up with a better plan, that they are like, all of the proto-dragons will eventually just be consumed by this ever-growing threat and his undead minions.
Oh, he can spawn.
Yeah, like I said, his breath, when it kills them, it also resurrects them as zombies.
Holy.
It's very, very odd because they don't really explain why he has like necromancy magic, but he does, and
it's just from the whispers from the old gods, and then eating other dragons that he gets that kind of power.
He's kind of like I don't know how to describe it. He seems to be like the first anomaly on Azeroth, but yeah, they don't give us too much information on how he exactly manages to do this.
A normal proto-drake before, or he was always
as
large?
Far as we know, yeah, he was just a really big one that eventually ate everything around until there was nothing besides other proto-drakes to eat.
So another one could be made? Maybe?
Possibly. He does actually have like some like children that he eventually had, I guess, because there is like the glory of the I believe the glory of the Orgrimmar Raider or something like that gives the spawn of Galakrond or Galakras or something like that, and it's supposed to be the last of his genetic line.
Wait, so that one that you've done that raid, I assume, a bunch, right?
Oh, I cheesed it and I did the mop remix and just bought them out.
Oh, I see. Well, because there's a part where you kill a dragon that looks like that mount. Like it's a proto-drake, red proto-drake with tattoos. And yeah, it's like Galakras, and you kill it. So that is a spawn of Galakrond?
It's supposed to be that it's the last of his line, yeah.
Huh.
Anything can be a mount. But basically, to keep this long story a bit shorter, all 5 of these dragons unite together, and they use their united intelligence to work with the keepers and figure out how to kill Galakrond. And they do this by essentially like having the faster ones distract him, and then like the more powerful ones like Neltharion and Alexstrasza and stuff like that hit him more directly. And I think they kind of change how it works. Like in the legacies, he seems to just kind of like fall over and die at some point, but I'm pretty sure in back in the Dawn of the Aspects books, they shove a massive rock into his throat and then he chokes on it and dies. So I don't know which one's a bit more like odd or disappointing, but they both seem a bit lackluster to me. Regardless, the point of this is that after this happens, the keepers see these intelligent proto-dragons as like an opportunity to better safeguard the rest of the world. So they decide to ascend them, and they make them into what they're kind of like their perfect form would be. And that's what we get the dragons that we know of from modern Warcraft and from, I mean, most like fantasy sources that you would find.
They transformed them.
They did. And they also, like I said, gave them specific aspects of life that they were set to like safeguard over. So Alexstrasza would be made the Lifebinder. Neltharion would be made the Earth Warder. Nozdorma would become the Timeless One and watch over the time waves. Ysera would be come the Dreamer, and she would watch over this alternate realm kind of called the Emerald Dream and just kind of maintain the connection between that and Azeroth. It's kind of where a lot of druids and stuff draw their power from. So
there's a controversial opinion about how they're transforming them with order magic.
And, yes, and we will talk about that more in just a second. But first, let me just mention, and then the blue one was Malygos, and he is the guardian of magic. We kind of mentioned them back in the Medivh episode. And to symbolize their unity, they would have the keepers build them this massive spire called the Wormrest Temple. And it would be where they would come together to meet and talk about like how they could commit to protecting Azeroth. Tyr would go on and found his own legacy, and the 8 dragons would move on to their own legacy, which is actually where we're going to get back to what you were just saying. Yeah, then there comes this pretty major conflict. Yeah, so dragons were created through being basically morphed through order magic, this is kind of the greater entity or source arcane magic comes from. And this is order magic. It's the exact opposite of chaos. It's the exact opposite of like the void and nothing. There's a fairly large conflict that kicks off. Before even this happens, there is Neltharion. Neltharion, like I said, he's the Earth Warder. And because he was the Earth Warder, he ended up being given the orders to basically watch over the deep caverns and the deep spaces within Azeroth. But what else is down in the deep caverns and spaces of Azeroth are the
Old
tentacles
gods.
and the whisperings of the old gods. So as he would go through with doing his obligation, he would begin to hear these whispers, and they would kind of convince him that not only were his fellow aspects going to betray him, but also that the just kind of the old god's plan for the world was significantly better. And he was already kind of like Neltharion in the, even when he was a proto-drake, was very much like the aggressive one. He was the fighter. He was the warrior tank that kind of, charges in, right?
Well, he's the protector of the land. You kind of have to be a Chad to do that, you know?
Exactly. So he also begins working on this group of soldiers. He wants to create a group of basically semi-humanoid dragon people that can wield all the different elements of the dragons, and with them under his control, he thinks that, well, not only can he accomplish his goals better, that maybe those whispers will come to pass and these guys might come in handy. And this is where he creates the Dracthyr, which, for those who play WoW, they're the most recent race that have been introduced to the game. And they are, like I said, a half dragon, half human kind of hybrid. And they're exactly what he wants. Yep, scaly boys. I guess they're not exactly what everyone wants, because we really were hoping for a beefier version, right?
Yeah, because you see, like, underneath Wormrest Temple, you know that raid?
Yeah, the dragon.
There's the guards. Like, that's what I was thinking you would look like, you know?
I agree. I do agree. I don't know why they just felt the need to separate that, but they do. And the Draken are also kind of mentioned in this series, but they are like, they don't have wings and can't fly and stuff like that, but they exist. They're also a creation of the flights. But while training these loyal elite soldiers, he would be given this artifact, Neltharion, called the Oathbinder. And it was basically this gauntlet that would just embody everyone that he wanted with order magic, basically like bolstering their will and binding their will to what he wanted. And again, this is where the first time we kind of see oath or order magic rather being not always a good thing.
It's forced upon.
It seems a bit forceful, right?
It's like, what if someone came to your land, force their religion,
And the Dracthyr don't know that this is happening. They just think that they are the most loyal soldiers because he's a great leader. And it's true that he is. He leads them into battle against this rising group of opposers called the Primalists. And they are these massive proto-dragons, basically, that have been imbued with this elemental energy through a process that's not really clear even still. But they're basically really upset because when the dragons needed to create more dragons to watch out for the world, they would steal proto-drake eggs from the wild that weren't guarded, and they would transform them into dragon eggs. So a few of the proto-dragons that are still really intelligent but not transformed like the aspects were disgusted by this, and they basically saw it as grounds for war, which, in all fairness, it kind of is. They're literally stealing their children out from underneath them.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah. So about 20,000 years ago from the opening of the Dark Portal, you get a time where the Dracthyr are meeting up with Neltharion, and he is basically like inspiring them to go to another war or something like that, when Raszageth the Storm Eater comes in. And again, if you've played Dragonflight, this is the raid boss of the very first phase. That's what it'd be, yeah.
Season.
Yep. And they were kind of lucky. I don't know if it was just luck, but they don't really go into too much detail about it. But Raszageth and a bunch of these other Primalist dragons, they strike Neltharion, and they kind of catch him by surprise because they manage to destroy the Oath binder. And when that happens, the order magic that's keeping the Dracthyr in control manages to fade. They're still really loyal because they don't have anything else to believe in. They were literally created to serve this man. But the magical binds that were making them like compassionate towards Neltharion, they go away. And with that being the case, they're kind of getting slaughtered by the proto-dragons. And for the first time, Neltharion will, not having enough strength on his own to just defeat these primalists, decide to resort to using the whispers of the old gods. He resorts to using the power that they promise him to make the world a better place and to protect himself when the others betray him or whatnot, right? And with that, he manages to seal away Raszageth in a magical prison by using these eldritch old god powers. And this would be the first time that he kind of gives in to it happening. And it would be the beginning of his true fall from grace as the aspect of the earth to who will eventually become known as Deathwing.
Did he visually, could you tell he was starting to be corrupted? Or do you not know? I don't know if it tells.
This is in the Legacies animation as well. And I mean, you see him have these purple glowing eyes, but I don't think it's definitely not something that any of the other aspects would be like, whoa, my guy, you're growing 3 arms.
Right, because then they would just be like, what the hell?
Because then they'd be like, you're corrupted with the old gods.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to Tides of Lore. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow adventurers. Your support makes all the difference. Thank you. So with the oath binder broken, right? Neltharion goes to his fellow aspect Malygos, and he's like, I am worried about my creation, the Dracthyr, because without being able to compel my obedience upon them, I'm worried that they'll become a problem for us in the future. And they're like, I agree. So they basically take all the Dracthyr and they summon them to this vault. And they're like, sick party going on for our victory or whatever over the Raszageth. And it's basically an ambush. They manage using magic to seal away all the Dracthyr, and this is where the Dracthyr will remain for the next 20,000 years. And he's pretty happy with this. He's just like, all right, now with that problem dealt with, I can move on to other things.
It's crazy he got literally all the Dracthyr. You'd think, one was staying home sick or something.
No, they are immensely loyal, it would appear.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to try and get into the incarnates too much more outside of who we've discussed with Raszageth, but basically with enough hard work and effort, they do manage to seal away the remaining incarnates, which are these other basically elemental beings outside of Raszageth, in this place called the Vault of Incarnates. And with that, the war with the Primalists will come to its end for now. I mean, some things just never stay buried, right? But like I said, at this time, Neltharion's really beginning to hear the whispers of the old gods, that the Fel and the old gods, they managed to be so unendingly corrupting. It's said that his paranoia would just continue to grow unchecked, and he would just constantly feel the need to lash out upon his own creations and stuff like that.
Sounds healthy. He's probably getting more corrupt too.
We're actually going to get right into just how corrupt he has been getting. It does take still 10,000 years before anything of too drastic would take place for everyone to notice. But to talk about that, we also have to briefly talk about another race that we're definitely going to need to give a full video to. But it's essentially the people that would lead to becoming the Night Elves, and I guess the High Elves, but they're still at this point 10,000 years ago before the Dark Portal, called the Highborne, and they rule pretty much all of what is now just called Kalimdor. It's not quite like the entire planet of Azeroth, it's just this big massive Pangea-like continent of Kalimdor, and they rule from right in the middle of it. There's this magical font of energy, quite similar to the one, like we mentioned, that the High Elves have in their city of Quel'Thalas in the Second War. But this one is significantly more powerful, and this is the Well of Eternity. And it's through this well that they would gain a bunch of knowledge about the arcane, and they would just quickly Before them, the trolls ruled the planet, but after they learned about the arcane and managed to become so powerful with it, the trolls stood no chance, and the elves completely took over.
Where was this well at in Kalimdor?
It's right in the dead center, and we'll talk about where it currently is in the game after we get to the end of this. Well, actually, I guess no spoilers. The Maelstrom is where the Well of Eternity used to be.
Oh.
Yeah. And we'll talk about how it gets there. I guess the major point is that they have this queen. And she's said to be quite literally... I was looking this up when I was trying to figure out if we could claim that Aegwynn was the most powerful mage. But I've seen a bunch of people that said unquestionably Azshara is seen as the most powerful mage that has probably ever existed.
What?
Yes.
Does she still have that power? I feel like I don't see her doing mage stuff too much.
I agree. I do agree. But allegedly, from what they say in the lore, she is said to have, before her transformation, been well beyond a guardian and even put up a challenge to like the aspects themselves.
What? And she got the power from the well? Or...
It would certainly seem like that, but she also definitely is like innately gifted because there's a bunch of high elves and they all live in the city and a lot of them benefit from this. But her power is still, again, just on something of another level. And she always wants more. That's kind of the problem with her. She is constantly looking for more power. So when through the Well of Eternity, which essentially was acting like a magical beacon flickering off in the distance, it said in the Chronicles that in the endless void of space, a dark presence stirred, and its gaze would fix on a radiant pulse, the Azeroth's Well of Eternity. And this is essentially just saying Sargeras would be able to see this flashing beacon in the cosmos calling to him to come to Azeroth and help him out.
Mm-hmm.
So he would begin to make contact with both Azshara and her chief advisor, Xavius, who is a big player. Yes, the Xavius.
I didn't know that.
Yep. And he kind of remains at odds with a lot of the other what will eventually become Night Elves for a very long time. But his story is definitely, like I said, more of a Legion expansion type thing.
Is he a Highborne?
He is a Highborne, yes. He's
so he wasn't a Night Elf. He was a Highborne.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I always thought Xavius was a Night Elf because I feel like you hear about him a lot in Eldrasil stuff. Or that area.
I would consider him a high elf. I would consider him a night elf. He's, like I said, all elves are basically the same at this point. There aren't blood elves. There aren't high elves. There are just the night elf. So Xavius would go to Azshara and be like, "Yeah, this guy's great. The Sargeras guy talked to him, said he'd give us a bunch of power." He's magnificent. Literally, he's like, he is magnificent, my queen, and we will serve his will. We'll be made eternal through him. And they would begin to kind of abuse the Well of Eternity to, I guess, just recklessly summon demons and stuff. But there were demons that were appearing across the realm of Azeroth now, and they were killing the elves.
One more time, who was summoning these?
Azshara and Xavius, because they believed that Sargeras would give them the power to make a world that is, perfect or whatever. Through this, eventually a group of people that would realize what's happening would begin to form a resistance. And two of these major players are going to be Malfurion Stormrage and Tyrande Whisperin.
Oh, the goats.
We also have, this is going to sound weird, there's two people that have time traveled from the future back in time, and one of them is a red dragon, and the other is the human mage of Dalaran by the name of Ronan.
Who's time traveling?
Ronan and this red dragon.
But
yes.
Ronan's doing the time traveling? Because the red dragon probably isn't. Okay.
And the red dragon is, yes.
Oh, I thought red was life.
We'll get into their story, like I said later. Main point is, there's a resistance against these invading demons, and they call upon the dragons. They're like, if the Highborne continue to abuse this well and continue to summon a bunch of demons into the world, much like Draenor, they don't know about Draenor, but much like it, that they're just going to destroy this entire planet. So we need to unite against them. And at first, the dragon aspects grow uneasy, and they're like, oh, I don't know, maybe. But eventually, they do decide to leave their kind of capital base of Valdrakken that they've created. They magically hide this land away with all of these like stone watchers, as well as some Kolkar and some other stuff, basically to be hidden away for however long until they Dragon Isles reawaken. And again, that's going to be another couple thousand years before we get there, so don't you worry about that. Just know, for now, Dragonland sleeping.
You said Kolkar. They were helping?
Is it the Kolkar or is it the... Who exists on the
aren't those
planet of the...
Centaur? Aren't they very violent?
God. I couldn't tell you, I'll be honest. I hated that portion of the Dragonflight expansion. But yeah, you're probably right. I think they are the Centaur. That was my bad.
Well, wait, no. There are good Centaur, though. Like, we do help Centaur in... I just don't know when they turn bad, right? Because Centaur were killing Tauren. So maybe they were helping, because there were good Centaur clans that we were helping in Dragonflight.
It also doesn't really matter. They mostly vibe by themselves. Some of, like I said, the stone creatures, they go to sleep for these next 10,000 years. But their species, along with like the Tuskar, they just live. They, live off the land for the next 10,000 years completely isolated, kind of like Pandaria does. Enough modification of using this Well of Eternity, they were eventually able to make direct contact with Sargeras, and they were looking to bring this demon god into the realm itself. And they were like, we can use this super powerful magical well to get you through. It'll be like a gateway. So also at this time, the dragons do decide, like I said, to come and join the fight. And they are very effective against killing all these demons. You can even see it in the Legacies animation, like I mentioned. But they rip and tear through these. But for the first time ever since their creation, they are not enough. They find that the demons are simply too powerful for just the dragonflights alone. So they go to, I imagine, the Wormrest Temple, and they discuss with each other, well, we need to create some sort of weapon or something that we can use so that we can defeat these demons and prevent this demon god from entering the realm. And that's when Neltharion's like, I have a great idea, guys. We should put all of our magical powers into a magic disc.
Oh my gosh. I know what's going to happen.
And all the dragons are like, sure, yeah, I guess that sounds like a great idea. It's more that the demon threat really is like growing, and they do actually need a solution. And for the last 10,000 years, Deathwing has Neltharion at this point has constantly found ways to fight off their enemies and to win them the day. So they're like, all right, we'll put our energy into this dragon soul. And it is a flat disc. We mentioned it in the last episode. It's used to eventually bind Alexstrasza. But they, all the aspects, with the exception of Deathwing through some deception, puts their magical power into this artifact. And it is supercharged. And it is going to be a very effective weapon. There's no doubt about it. So they basically go to this giant clash at the Well of Eternity. And you can see this through one of the other Caverns of Time dungeons. The Well of Eternity, I believe it is called. And basically your job is to make sure that everything in any of the Caverns of Time is to make sure the timeline goes correctly. And that is basically that Deathwing, instead of using the Dragon Soul to defeat all of the enemies of Azeroth, he instead turns it on his own allies. The words of the old gods finally fully corrupting him, and he decides to betray the remaining aspects to take their power. And with this, pretty much, I mean, the entire unity of the aspects themselves was shattered. Like, it wasn't something that they were like, let's continue to work together. It was like a massacre, really. Like, it is said that the entirety of the Blue Dragon fight, for the most part, was nearly wiped out. And the weapon unleashed such a massive explosion that it would send, like, certain dragons, like I believe Syndragosa dies in this fight, and her body goes flying so far that she lands from where they currently are at the Maelstrom into what is modern-day Northrend, and just crash lands dead.
Wasn't she the leader of the Blue Dragon flight?
She was very high-ranking. She was, like, a second to Amalagos, I believe. They have her quest in Dragonflight. I just can't remember all the details of it because it's been a minute. But yeah, she's definitely a very high-ranking person in the blue flight, and she dies almost. I mean, she does die. Most of the blue dragons die, and this obviously is a huge like physical blow to the dragons and their ability to fight off the demons. But it's also just like crushing, especially to people like Malagos, who lost pretty much his entire flight and is now seeing the world's magic spinning out of control, and what he considered basically his closest friend to be a traitor.
I remember she got raised by the Lich King. That's what it was. That's where
I
remember that name from Sindragosa.
Yeah, if you watch the Wrath of the Lich King cinematic, I believe Sindragosa is the one that he's pulling out.
Yeah,
I think the
that's
card
her.
might. Yeah. So that's where you'll eventually find her coming back into the story. But for now, demons are pouring into Azeroth. The world is being engulfed by chaos. And that is where we're going to pick up next time with the beginning of the War of the Ancients. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode. Your guys' support truly means the world to us. If you're interested in hearing more, we have our full show on YouTube and Spotify, new episodes dropping every Tuesday. I also want to take this moment to give a special thank you to Fantasy Lo-Fi for providing the music for this episode. You can find them on YouTube at Fantasy Lo-Fi or on Spotify under Bits and Hits. Be sure to show them some love, as their music does truly bring this journey to life. Once again, thank you for joining us on Tides of Lore, and we will see you next week.